we're on the road beyond. I'm Todd Duplantis. Welcome to the show. Welcome to you, Facebook Live and our audience on YouTube. Thanks for being here tonight. We've got two great episodes we're about to kick off. You know, usually my co-host is Ike McFadden. Well, he's on vacation, or I should say on assignment this week. And I'm a bit nervous about tonight's show because, of course, we got Pete Haviland, my producers, with us. But Pete, we've got one of my mentors in the room tonight, Scotty Barrett. He's joining us as co-host for the next two episodes. He was a mentor of mine and literally the first news reporter that I had a chance to go out and learn from back when I was intern. Scotty has a history in television reporting. He was there for the launch of CNN. That's right. He covered President Reagan being shot. That was one of his big stories back then. He also worked for Fox 26 News, where I met him, City Under Siege, and KNWS, among other outlets. Scotty, welcome to the show. Good to have you on my show, my friend. I'm a bit nervous tonight. Well, your mic's, unmute your mic. There we go. Let's see.
My mic is now. It's great to be here with you, Todd. It's wonderful. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you. It's been quite a while since we worked together, but we're glad to have you on the show. Pete Haviland, our producer, joining us, of course, live as always. Pete, good to see you tonight.
Great seeing you as well.
So we've got an interesting show for you tonight. We're going to be going deep into the paranormal history of Nevada. We're talking ghosts, specters, and the rich history of Reno and other towns. Janice Oberding, a historian in film and crime buff, is the author of many books in the true crime and paranormal genre. Her books include The Boy Nevada Killed, Floyd Loveless, and the Juvenile Capital Punishment Debate, Ghosts and Legends of Nevada's Highway 50, Haunted Lake Tahoe, and Haunted Virginia City. Janice, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to ask you, because a lot of people who work in the paranormal industry or writing about paranormal events have some type of connection because maybe they've had a personal connection to the paranormal or something that happened to them years ago. Is there a story behind how you came involved and intrigued with the paranormal?
Well, not really. I've always loved history. And I think history is part of the paranormal. Anytime you're investigating a ghost, you're researching a ghost, you're bound to encounter some historical ideals or facts. And my grandmother was she was very interested in ghosts back in the day. And she would talk to me about ghost stories and stuff like that. But no, not any experiences that would have pushed me in that direction.
You know, it's funny you mention that because I had a great grandmother who used to just, as a matter of fact, talk about all these wild ghost stories. Like her biggest story was she was at a funeral one year and the person in the coffin actually sat up. She sweared this happened. The person wasn't dead. And I guess back in the day, you know, they used to be a little early to declare somebody dead when they weren't really dead. Yeah. They were so matter of fact with these stories.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That is true about pushing them off to the great beyond before they were ready.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stories behind that. Scotty, you know, I think a lot of folks always think mobsters when you hear about Nevada. You know, the history of Las Vegas, Reno, of course. Let's talk a bit about, did the mobsters play into any of the paranormal history that was involved with Nevada?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Janice. I want to hear you.
They did.
And what were some of the ties? Because that's one thing that people think, well, you know, you've got famous mobsters that established major towns. There was a lot of crime going on. Did that leave its imprint on the paranormal history? And maybe you can explain how it did.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Bugsy Siegel in Las Vegas. And he was very popular at one time, but not toward the end. He became less and less popular because he was losing the mob a lot of money. But he was very careful with his safety. He had bulletproof car, limousine, I guess you want to say, bulletproof windows in his penthouse and all these security guards around him. He was well protected in Vegas, but he wasn't so protected when he went to Virginia Hill's house in Beverly Hills, and that's where he was killed. His ghost has been seen a lot of times at the Flamingo, and that is possible in his old penthouse. His ghost has been seen there and also in the Rose Garden, and that's possible. But there was also another murder that took place in his penthouse in the 50s, a murder-suicide. Mm-hmm. And so I've often wondered if maybe people are seeing the man who killed his fiancée and himself rather than actually Bugsy.
Scotty, I know you have an interesting connection with Nevada, and we wanted to talk a bit about that. Maybe you can tell us yours.
I'm just very interested, Janice, in your reading of how the spiritual realm, I like to call it the fourth dimension, mm-hmm. how much of that is timeless with regard to the early settlers, like Brigham Young and the Mormons who came across the plains to Utah. How much of that is endemic of what you have been able to find?
Well, I think the old Mormon fort, where I believe the Mormon settlers were at first, is one place that a lot of activity and things occur, and I think possibly there. And there's a couple of more places that may or may not be haunted.
The Mountain Meadows Massacre, for example?
Yeah, that is, I don't know. Is that in Nevada or is that still in Utah?
That's still in Utah here. But let me ask you this question. With regard to the physical manifestation of these spiritual entities, how much is physical? How much can they actually control in our dimension and actually move things?
I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know. I've seen things. I've seen some weird things that I can't explain. Like one time I was at Lake Tahoe with Mark and Debbie, and we were filming at the old Calneva, and we were in Frank Sinatra's room, and we're talking. We're explaining to this cameraman who's totally a skeptic and thinking we're crazy. We're explaining to him how that ghost can turn off cameras, can move things. Yeah. And he turns away from us. His camera's away from us. Yeah. And a remote control that was on a counter did like a somersault, went up and came back down. And we all saw it. The cameraman didn't see it. No, he didn't catch it, but we did see it. So I'm thinking that was Frank Sinatra.
Going to the physical manifestation and talking about gambling in Reno and Las Vegas, goes to Las Vegas. Let me ask you this. How much credence could there be with all the video surveillance in these casinos to see dice being moved after the throw, to see roulette wheels dropping the ball on a certain number? Is there something there?
I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't seen that. I wish if I were at one of those games and the spirits or ghosts would help me that way, but no, I haven't seen that.
There are those who claim. There are those who claim.
Yeah, there are some that claim that. Yeah, maybe a little bit of things going on there that not necessarily are paranormal, but making people money nonetheless.
Well, let's shake it. Let's shake it.
Exactly. I wanted to talk with you. You mentioned Mark and Debbie, and that's Mark and Debbie Constantino. The two were well-known reality TV stars, and they were involved with a very famous, unfortunate incident with a murder-suicide. You wrote a book called Demon Song, and you had because you knew the two personally, maybe you can share a bit about their story in knowing them as people and maybe some of the misconceptions that people may have of what exactly happened.
Well, you're right. It was very tragic. The thing is, they were two people. They were just ordinary, everyday people with the same problems that we all have. I mean, they had all the problems that everyday life has. And they were very much in love, but they were both very jealous of one another, to the point Mark could not speak to another woman for fear. If he did, Debbie would be very upset, and vice versa. They were very attractive people. I've traveled with them a lot, and I tell you, I never could, in my wildest imagination, I never could have imagined that this would happen. I just couldn't, because Debbie was an excellent homemaker, cook. I mean, sure, they were on Zach's show a lot, and they were famous, and they had charisma, especially Debbie. I mean, they both had boatloads of charisma, and deeply in love. And I was shocked like everybody else.
They were very well known as EVP experts.
Yes.
And for those of you who aren't aware, it's electronic voice phenomena, where it's believed that you can capture the other world, the fourth dimension, those who have passed away, on recordings. Were you with them when they did a lot of these EVPs, and were you witness to some of the things that they came up with?
Yes, I did. I was with them a lot of times when they did EVP and the investigations. At one point we did a lot of investigating together, but our friendship ended because of a disagreement on whether or not a particular EVP was actually really a ghost, or rather it was me. And because in investigation, if you're doing EVP, you can't be standing right next to each other and recording, and yet we were. So when they had the ultimate, the best ever, I say it was me, and they said no, it wasn't. It was actually a ghost. So anyway, that's how our friendship ended. But yeah, I was with them a lot when they did that.
Well, just to ask you about that situation, because you hear a lot of times in some of these ghost shows that people are challenged to create something which is interesting for camera. Do you think they possibly could have been doing that in that case, from your opinion?
I don't think so. I mean, yes, you're right. But I think a particular person who has a lot of a charisma with living people's bound to have some with dead people too. I mean, and I believe if you're genuinely interested in that and you're doing an investigation, your chances of getting some type of activity are better than somebody who says, oh, this is boring, I don't want any part of it. So yeah.
Wanted to go on and change subjects a bit. We talked about the history of the ghosts in Nevada. Do you find a lot of it involves going back to the gold rush? Anything like that may play a role in why the state's so haunted?
Well, Virginia City is actually Nevada's most haunted town or city. And I believe a lot of it is because of the silver rush, the rush to Washoe. And there was an inordinate amount of suicides up there at the time during the silver rush. Life was really cheap. It's really sad. These people were killing each other and dying before they were 30. I mean, it's very tragic and sad. And I believe that violence and that greed, it just drove people to want to get in there and become wealthy, had a lot to do with why there's still a lot of paranormal activity in Virginia City.
Well, was there a lot of suicides because people were going there to find riches and fame and fortune and didn't do so, and were heartbroken over that? Did that play a role in it?
They didn't really care about fame, and they wanted to be wealthy. And not everybody can be wealthy. Even in those days, not everybody's wealthy. And when they'd see somebody strike it rich, there was like a lot of jealousy and things like that why isn't that me? And oftentimes there was a lot of prostitution in Virginia City, if you will, and the women often kill themselves because husbands, boyfriends abandon them, or just that type of thing.
Have you, a lot of times when people go on investigations, there are some things that just literally scare the heck out of them. Have you been involved with something where you started the investigation and you had to step back because it was so terrifying? Has that happened to you?
Yeah, that's happened. That happened recently at a place, and the people will be very angry if I mention the name of the place. I can't mention the name of the place other than to say it's in Tonopah. But yeah, I was there doing an investigation with 3 friends and my husband. And at one point, as we were trying to get EVP, I go by my feelings a lot too. I think it's good to trust our instincts. I felt very overwhelmed that whoever this is not a good person, wasn't a good person. A lot of evil, and I'm not talking demons. I'm just talking evil. People are evil. I mean, they can be evil. And I left. I didn't want any part of that particular spot. Another time I was with Mark and Debbie, and I tell people this sometime and they think, oh yeah, you guys must have been drinking. No, we weren't drinking. We were at a cemetery in Georgia, and it was called the Noonday Cemetery, and there's red sand, and I believe that it might have been where they buried slaves. Very negative, intense, and we're there with these people from Georgia who've taken these Nevadans, and they're going to show us this is a really hot spot. You guys are really going to get evidence. We got in there, and Debbie and I'll never know if we were really encouraging each other or if actually we were experiencing the same thing at the same time. I'll never know the answer to that, but we saw this weird looking, like a little gnome type thing, maybe 4 foot tall, and it would get closer to us and then it would stop. It would get closer to us and then it would stop. And she asked me, do you see that? And yeah, I saw it. She said, I think we better go. So she and I and Mark took off running. I know we probably made a bad impression on Georgia ghost hunters, but yeah, when you see something, when something like that happens, I think there's no point in sticking around.
Was it like a shadow person?
No, I think it might have been, but what it looked like to me was some, like an evil little gnome or something.
Wow. We've been talking with Janice Oberding. She's a historian and film and crime buff, and also the author of several books. Janice, if folks are interested in your books, where can they find you on the web?
Facebook.
Facebook, Amazon, you're all over, right?
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us tonight, telling us, sharing some very interesting stories on Nevada. Read up on her books, folks. We'll have some links in our social media posts. Janice, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So, Pete, we were hearing about some interesting things with Janice, and I know you have been involved with many investigations. I'm going to ask you the same question. Have you been involved with something where you're just like, whoa, this scares the hell out of me. I'm stopping this right now?
I came across something in a 1900 storm survivor house. They had contacted us because they were hearing footsteps on the stairs. The piano was making sounds. We kind of went out there and was looking at, we heard children's giggling, and my EVP was going off. There was a heavy electromagnetic field, and it was dark. I investigate in the light as well as in the dark, but it was dark. Turned a corner and I saw what looked like a ashen white little boy. Wow. And I not only saw it, but the medium I was with saw it as well. I don't know if it was projected to us to see that. And the state it was in, it looked like he had been dead for a while. That really freaked me out. I had to go outside and I had to gather my thoughts. Children, anytime I deal with children, whether it's missing children or stuff like that, it always gets me.
Certainly would make you step back. Scotty, you are a trained news hound, if we may call you a news hound. You're always thought you always have to look at things from two sides. There's always seems to be, you have to find a logical explanation with things. But have you encountered things that, logic just didn't play a role? I don't know what happened here. Does it happen to you?
Yeah. There have been a few situations where I have been at crises. For example, the flight of Air Florida Flight 90 that hit the 14th Street Bridge in Washington, D.C. in 1981. All those people dying. I was there on the bridge. I went down at the river. And then walking among the corpses, all you saw were feet that were crumpled from the impact of the jet on that 14th Street Bridge. There was definitely a feeling there that was absolutely overwhelming.
Right.
It wasn't just the dead bodies and the cold and the snow. There was something else there that really affected me.
Certainly things that affect us all. There are just some things. I mean, I can think the constant theme throughout the show, and Ike may disagree when he's back on next week, but there are things in this world that we just don't have a logical explanation for. All right, we're going to move on to our news. Here's a look at some of the weird, tantalizing, and just plain bizarre stories posted from our partners at the Full Spectrum Project on Facebook. Pete Haviland, very well aware of the Full Spectrum Project. Aren't you, Pete?
Yes, sir, I am.
Yes, sir, he is. All right, Scotty, just to clue you in on another theme of the show, Bigfoot's topic around here. We discuss Bigfoot regularly on the show. And there was an intriguing article posted this week on the Full Spectrum Project's Facebook page. If you go there, you're going to see 3 photos. The photos kind of stand for themselves. The update, I believe, is satire. It came off a satire page because it talks about a sheriff's department somewhere in Florida, and they're investigating a Bigfoot. Well, that's not what got me. It's these pictures. And Pete, maybe you can comment on that because the article seemed like a joke. The pictures, very intriguing.
Well, I kind of thought that it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but having looked at them, I have seen bears walk on their back feet, especially if their front paws are damaged. I know that there was one that was a famous bear that was walking through backyards and stuff. I think he actually was killed by a hunter not too long ago. But it looked pretty. It looked pretty intense on what it was.
Yeah,
I'd like to know if they actually caught something, whether it's Bigfoot or something. It's pretty clear.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's very clear, which is questionable. Most of the Bigfoot photos we see are shaky, but these are very clear photos.
Yeah, it's not blurry, so it's probably not Bigfoot.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a guy in a suit. Who knows?
It could be.
But they're very
orange hair. That's the question. In Florida, did it have orange hair in Florida?
Yeah, no orange hair. Yeah.
No
but
orange hair.
we're gonna go with this one's worth further investigation. I want to get Ike's take on it when he gets back next week, because Ike is usually the one going, yeah, great, but reality is it's just not true. These are interesting photos, so take a look at them. Go to the Full Spectrum Project Facebook page. Take a look. Hey, guys, we're going to wrap up this show. Our next guest, Sam Baltrusis, is on deck right now. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter as the Road Beyond Podcast. Also, make sure you subscribe to our Road Beyond Podcast YouTube channel. Scotty Barrett, you'll be back in a few moments for our next episode, will you not?
Can't wait. Thank you, Todd.
All right. Pete Haviland, stick around. All of you, we'll be back with more next time on the Road Beyond.